55 years uninterruptedly happy. And it's given him an awesome life. And you know what? He thinks that you can do it too. So everybody, let's hear it for
I might have rephrased it in that I know you can. I don't just think you can. Because that's a little, knowing gives you the idea that push yourself. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Before I begin, I tell all of my audiences that I answer all my mail. I am a relic. I will die out. I write letters. I write 300 to 600 letters every month for about 35 years. I correspond with 139 countries, and I'm caught up, even though I travel 250 to 275 days a year now. So if you need a friend, have ideas no one will talk with you about, or you have a project you'd like some input into, or just want to hate me, write me. So, hey, you're free to hate me. I say radical things and actually don't care if you hate me. I need to say them. So, today, I'm supposed to do a presentation, Living a Life of Joy, as a workshop, but I was only given 3 hours, and it's a 4-hour workshop, so I'm actually going to tell you the exercises you would do, but not do them. So you can go, but of course you don't have to lay down on the floor or make a fool of yourself. However, to offer something new and a delight, I'm going to show you really kinky films. So, the way this will go is, I'll tell you, I start with the 8 exercises. So the first exercise, I say, come in and be a piece of furniture. And it's always fun for me to try to figure out what piece of furniture they're being. Especially if they're standing there going, I don't know what to be, I don't know. That's the human piece of furniture, which there are a lot of them. And that would be the couch potato, right? Okay. Then I have people circle up in groups of 20 to 30, and they're facing the inside of the circle, and I say, look around and feel crazed desire to run and hug people. And so I build them up to a frenzy, and then go, ah, and then do it again to a frenzy, ah, and then I say, go nuts. And so people do a lot of going nuts. Then I say, pair off with somebody you don't know, and decide who will go first, and then I have a person talk about the joy in their life, and I said, if you don't have any, I want you to lie. No plumbers. Okay, and that's 5 minutes, and then switching, and the other person does 5 minutes. And you can imagine what you would talk about, maybe on the break or something. And then I put on Chuck Berry. I'm a jitterbugger, and it's the main reason I've stayed in really good shape, even at 73, because I love that fast rock and roll. And it's a celebration of exercise. And then I have, after that, people wander around laughing hysterically. And then I have them take a piece of paper and a writing implement, and I say, do something with them. I don't say what. I say you can put the pencil in your ear and eat the paper, and often demonstrate. And so people make paper airplanes to send a message or whatever. And then the last one, everybody piles on the floor, laying down, weaving bodies, hopefully touching 5 or 6 people. And I tell them to yell out the things they love about their life. And then, after they've done that for a while, I ask them if they've mentioned sex and chocolate, because if you don't mention those things, you're probably fibbing. And then I start the presentation. So did you do all those things? Yeah. Great, and notice how much more comfortable you are not having moved the chairs. And you can tell me later if showing these adorable films helps the idea that we missed the exercises. Okay, so first I want to give a background, and some of it was given to you, as to why I feel qualified as an expert on joy. I'm a World War II baby. Didn't even see my father until I was a year and a half old. Everything I like about myself came from my mother. I never saw her angry, unkind, unjust to anybody. She was a 5th grade school teacher. The only difference we had is I'm a raging political person. And my mother said, if you can't say something nice, don't say it at all, which is very 19th century and adorable, but it doesn't work in activism, especially if your president is Donald Trump. I need to be critical of him every day. Yes. Thank you. If you like him, I apologize. I don't want to hurt him. You know, and if I needed my outhouse cleaned, I'd be happy to have him do that. As far as anything to do with leadership, except combing his hair, I don't know of what use he is. Okay, so I grew up on military bases overseas. I didn't really know the United States, and in 1961, my father died from war. He really died before in his soul. He was a man sitting in a chair, drinking a lot, and chain-smoking cigarettes. That's what I knew him as. And if I mention, it was the Korean War that really destroyed his soul, and I couldn't even mention it, he would weep. He never really played with his 2 sons. So we moved back to the U.S. in 1961, and if you know anything about our history, the U.S. was in the throes of the Civil Rights Movement at that time. And I remember when my life changed forever. I was in a public park at a public drinking fountain, public, and the sign says whites only. And my life changed forever. I wept and wept and wept. I could not believe that this was a true statement. I tore down the sign, and I realized my country was fake and religion was fake, and that people could actually dislike a person for color. Really shallow. And I had 2 more years of high school in a public high school in a city with 22% black population, and it was all white. And so in that time in U.S. history, a lot of people, especially in the South, I was in Virginia, would be yelling the N-word frequently because they didn't like the fact that people were fighting for their rights. They forgot that they were in the U.S., but they probably don't know anything about U.S. history. And so when I heard the N-word in class, I would scream really loud and really long until I saw everybody hate me. And then I would say, you can say that word, but I have to do this. And then the bullies would beat me up after school. And so, in 1 year, 62, 63, 3 times I was in a mental hospital. I didn't want to live in a world of violence and injustice. I thought the psychiatrist was an idiot, and I hated the effect of the antidepressants on my imagination. And between the 2nd and 3rd hospital, I was present at Martin Luther King's most famous I Have a Dream speech, and I got it. I realized, stupid, you don't kill yourself, you make revolution. Glory be, revolution. And that's when I found out my mother gave me self-esteem, because I didn't have to develop into a revolutionary. I simply had to decide what that revolution was going to be, because I knew I could do whatever I decided. And that has made my life. As she described, I made a decision to never have another bad day as a political act for peace and justice and care for all people and nature. And that I already was an extreme extrovert, and so I became a very dangerous person. And it has served me beautifully every day of my life. That the 2 hours sleep I got on an uncomfortable seat on the plane last night to come here will not show in this talk. And I'm wired that I get always to shove my propaganda down people's minds. Now, this is an easy group. No haters here, probably. Not too many, no good haters anyway. So, you know, I was 18 in that last hospital when I made the decisions, and I'm a nerd, so I was not a person who needed to study. I was a straight A student pretty much through medical school, and so I had all this free time. I was too weird for dates. And you gals wanted the manly men, and I've been a sissy boy all my life. And so, just to give you some ideas, I've spent 2 hours a day for 2 years calling up wrong numbers to practice talking with people. How long can I keep them on the line until I say I have to go? And I spent 2 to 4 hours a week going into Washington, D.C. and riding up and down elevators, because once that door shuts, there they are. Maybe you'll come up here for a second just to demonstrate. That's right. You will not be harmed. This is a man on an elevator. Here's the back wall. And the door opens, and traditionally, unless you think you're going to date them, you turn around and show your butt. Well, this was the first and simplest exercise I did. The door opens, and I did this. Notice I'm not touching. And, hi. Hi there. He's a little too friendly. But some were. Thank you very much. And, you know, I infiltrated the KKK because all I had to do was be white. And my hair was short in those days. That was 1963. And I'm a reader. My library is 40,000 books. I know 4 hours of poetry by heart. I love ideas, and I was reading a lot and finding out what I wanted to think. And I wanted to be a doctor. And so I got in medical school after 3 years of undergraduate, and then went to medical school and graduated. Within a month of medical school, I saw there was nothing about a hospital I liked. It was an embarrassment that 95% of my professors were rude, arrogant pricks, diagnostically speaking. Hospitals were unhealthy, chaotic, hierarchical places, and that's where we're supposed to do healing. So I knew within a month of medical school I would never work in their system. And as an activist, I thought the thing I wanted to dedicate myself to was to create a hospital addressing all the problems of healthcare delivery in one model. So, I've never made a penny as a doctor. 51 years in medicine, I've never made any money. Our hospital doesn't charge money. It's the only hospital that doesn't carry malpractice insurance. It doesn't accept any third-party reimbursement, government or private insurance. I'm a family doctor, so my initial interview with a patient is 3 or 4 hours long. And I went to their home to visit them, and when I visited a home, I snooped. You know how differently I would know you if I snooped where you live. I opened the drawers and looked under the beds, etc. Played with the children, often in their room without the parents, because I wanted children to know if they were hurting and thinking about hurting themselves, that they could have a friend in need. And so, when I graduated in 1971, no one gave me a hospital. But what the hell, I am a hippie, and it was 1971, so I started a commune. 20 adults, 3 of us doctors, lived into a 6-bedroom house and said we were a hospital. We were open 24/7. We did this project for 12 years. We had 500 to 1,000 people in our home each month, with 5 to 50 overnight guests a night. You can imagine 6-bedroom house, 20 adults and their children living there. Let's just say there was interaction. And a very large number of profoundly mentally ill people came. They were all welcome. There were 2 rules: no hard drugs, no physical violence. You could be as creative in your behavior as you wanted to be, but you just couldn't hit anybody. And boy, did we have fun. Never once giving a psychiatric diagnosis or psychiatric medicine, because we don't find those things useful in the practice of medicine. As I like to say, I never disliked a patient enough to give them an antidepressant. So, our hospital, people called us the Zanies because that was their description of how the place was. It was playful and wild and loving. So that's my background, why I feel qualified to present ideas about living joyfully. What is happiness? What is joy? I call it that state of being where one's celebration of life is obvious by their actions. They're so damn happy, it shows. It's not simply a philosophical construct. I'm not talking about a moment in time, like a graduation or a wedding. I will be happy at the wedding. I'm not talking about happiness as a reward for something, that if I get an A on the test, I'll be happy. If I get a B, I'll be bummed. That definitely happened in medical school with classmates. So it's that state of being where one's celebration of life is obvious by their actions. It shows that they love life. How did we get there? How is it that anyone with 500 billion brain cells with as many as 10,000 connections to a cell? Miserable. I mean, in the short form, if you need to go home now, the short form is, if you have food and a friend, what are you bitching about? I mean that. And so I tried to understand, how did we get there? If you look at the news is bad news. There's not a good news daily newspaper, to my knowledge, in the world. I know a few have tried to start one. But the typical newspaper is, the front section is international murders, intrigue, and horrible things that people are doing. And then the local news are the local horrible things and murders and catastrophes that are happening. And then there's that real favorite, the sports page, multimillionaires playing with their balls. Ooh, that's interesting. And, wow, how did we get there? Look at religions. There's salvation through suffering. And you look at Christianity, Buddhism, their life is about suffering and you deal with it. Well, it's a tricky way to get you to believe in their God. And I don't like the interpretation. What about my profession, psychiatry? I mean, some of those diagnoses are 4 words long. I don't believe in any of them. I think that mental illness is a consequence of loss of tribe. For millions of years, we primates have lived as a group. I think the most dangerous and worst decision socially in human history was nuclear family. It doesn't work in any country. I've talked to social workers and psychologists in the 83 countries I've lectured in and say, what percentage of your couplings are happy and healthy? They never say more than 15%, and usually they're hoping it's 15%. It's environmentally a disaster and requires a huge amount of environmental destruction. And in the US, where the partnership has to work in order to pay for their things, they put their kids in some kind of daycare, and if mother gets Alzheimer's or a child is born with cystic fibrosis, one of them can't work and has to stay home. What I tell people is if you have 10 couples, and we'll just make it easy, mom, dad, and 2 kids, you have 10 of those people living together, 15 can lose their job and still are economically viable. Feel the difference between what happens now. And if somebody in your family needs care, you have a community of care. The smartest thing I ever did was to be communal, because that's who we are as a species. And not having it is why mental illness stepped forward. Because instead of having buds, you feel alone or something. Ouch. And as wild animals, and we are from wild animals, it's hard to see it a lot of times, we're so miserable, that I think mental illness is also a loss of connection to nature. If you don't know how, however troubled you are, to sit in a tree and know that it all goes away, you don't know trees or bugs. I love insects. When we talk about tough and survivors, they'll be here. They'll remember humans. But most people I've had as patients did not have nature except maybe a pet, which they've turned into a anti-nature, human-esque creature that needs their owner. And that's where I think most mental illness comes from, is that we do not have our buds. I will be so bold as to say that there is never a disease, depression. It is a symptom of loneliness. That, how do you know you have a friend? You can't be depressed. It isn't friendship. It's friend. It's that human that swims in your head and you always have it, even if they're dead. Isn't that great? You can have all the people you love that are dead pushing you right now and cheering you on.
And so, are they dead? I don't know.
If you say they're not dead, you might be crazy. Which, in my world, is actually a positive statement. Oh, you're crazy. Yeah. I like that thought.
Oh. So what about mental illness? I want to talk about boredom, loneliness, and fear. I know I've never been bored. I can't imagine what it must be like to have nothing to think about, nothing to remember, no one to think about, no idea to think about, no vision to remember. What the hell is it?
Okay, so I go, why have you not watched TV in 36 years? Because I didn't start earlier. I think of the TV as the worst invention of the 20th century, and if I could, I'd go zap and there'd be no TVs. And now, with the smartphone, it has made young people stupid beyond belief. I lecture at 40 universities a year, and the kids don't know anything. And they don't know how to formulate an argument. There might be one or two that can. But generally, and since I am on the road so much, I go to an airport and most everybody is doing this. Where's curiosity? They're not even getting complete sentences. And so that's mostly why I've never used them and don't know how to use them.
What is boredom? What could we think about?
If we think about English literature, Wordsworth wrote two of his greatest poems addressing these two issues, Intimations of Immortality and Tintern Abbey.
There was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth and every common sight that seemed a parrot of celestial light. And this long poem is about disconnecting from people. And Tintern Abbey is about disconnecting from nature. And so the warnings have been there. And how is it that we can go out in the woods and not be ecstatic?
Notice how the other animals are. No, the birds are chirping. If you go out in nature, nature is enjoying itself, except the humans. And I want to be a real advocate for thinking, for allowing your senses to offer you the smells. You ever go on an elevator where there's 6 or 7 people and go, nice, who is that? Think of the fun you can have. If you're smiling, you can, I'd love to see, will they let me smell their armpits?
Okay, if I was on an elevator with you, raise your hand if you would let me smell your armpit. Look around and hope that you see them.
And what face do you need to be an armpit-smelling face?
It's, the possibilities are large. This idea that people don't have something to think about and so are bored is inconceivable to me. And that's where the third part, so people and friends, nature, and the third part of mental health are the arts. You know, I think I could be in front of a firing squad, and if they were playing Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto, I'd say, shoot me! But in the arts, and there's so many of them, all of the visual arts, and it's not like they all got lost in one particular style. That if you find yourself interested in all of the arts of all of the countries, then you don't have a life long enough to study and look and appreciate a fraction. And you can become, I love Magritte, I love those big apples, where he paints a picture of a huge green apple in a room. And of course, a person that may not like Magritte goes, come on, there's a big apple in a room. Okay, so it's not going to be Magritte for that person. They might like Norman Rockwell, the family scene. So those, for me, those three things are mental health. And they're infinite. You can't know all 7.4 billion people, not even close. There's no way to check out all of nature. I mean, I have 600 books on insects, and still I'm hungry for more. The housefly book is this thick. That damn thing you swat as soon as you possibly can. I used to go and like to collect a jar full of flies and put a patient in a small room and then release all the flies. Therapeutic. And, you know, if you're a doctor, you can call anything you do therapy. Look at what they do. Look at all those things doctors do. I mean, a nightmare to me. I mean, if you're troubled, they give you a pill that really hurts you, really hurts your imagination. But if they can deaden you, you're fine. Where my longest hug when our hospital was open was 12 hours. Imagine the fun we had. It wasn't, okay, oh yeah, first minute, second minute. Other people joined in. I can show you a film where we did bark-alongs with bulimics.
Really?
Do you know what bulimia is? Okay. What do you call it here?
Bulimia.
Oh, listen to that. You have a connection. Can we all do that? 1, 2, 3. And you know, the next time a speaker comes to an event where you are, get everybody to agree where you do. And everybody goes, it'll be the speaker's first time. And there's so much fun to be had. So this Gordon thing, please get rid of your television. Allow yourself no more than an hour a day on your smartphone. Because it's really a dumb phone. You can get more from your pet than that phone will ever do for you. Who has a pet? Yeah, I like pets. Cats? Wow, and I'm madly in love with Susan Parenti, and I knew she would never have children. However, when we got those 2 cats 6 years ago, I saw what she would have been like as a mommy. And boy, it's right there. It's so beautiful to see. And almost anything can be a pet. There are people who have pet pigs in apartments. Like if you went on a first date with that person, and you go to their house and you have a pig, what are the chances on the second?
For some, oh, just for fun, you go to the apartment of the person for a first date and there's a pig. Who thinks they'll still probably want a second date? It's a liberal audience. Must be laughing yoga people. So boredom is a real concern of mine. I just hate. We have horrible schools. You know, in the U.S., if I could, I would triple school teachers' salary because they're the most important person of the human community. No grades. Grades are evil. Even if you're a straight-A student, they're evil. Okay? Full autonomy. If you study the Finnish schools, they're called the best schools in the world. The teachers have autonomy. I think the strongest initiative I push all over the world, I haven't found one school in the world in 13 years that teaches 1 hour on the intelligence of loving. The most important thing in life isn't taught in a single public school in the world. Not 1 hour. I would like it taught 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, K through 12, to where by 7th grade, the other classes are 4 days a week, and 1 day a week, you're sent out into the community to love. And whatever your style is, taking care of the environment, taking care of people by themselves. Imagine how a mental health worker could say you need 2 or 3 pounds a day. I would love that. I assign people to people. Okay, loneliness. Clearly, it is the worst human experience. So much of mental illness is around the issue of loneliness. I actually feel assured that you cannot have a friend dancing in your head and have mental illness at the same time, because the friend is larger. And partly it's because we don't train ourselves to put things in our mind. And that's why when our hospital was open, we were a tribe of 20 adults. We also were a place where people who loved us and were our friends loved to come. So there were 20 of us living there, and usually at least 15 people who came there not because they needed care, but because they wanted to give care. And so you had, on a given day, 35 people really glad you're there. Everything's free, food is free, fun was addicting, and it was so powerful, and that we weren't irresponsible not to give psychiatric medicine. We didn't need it. And it wasn't that we were saying, well, we're not going to give it because we didn't need it. We liked lunacy. So if I can give you an example, and I apologize for the vulgarity of it, but this sort of thing happens in the U.S. a fair number of times, where there's somebody standing out in the street or in a grocery store going, "Fuck you! Fuck you!" And traditionally in the U.S., what they do is they call the police then take them to a psychiatric place, and they're given the Zine sisters, Thora and Stella, or Powball, all horrible drugs. And that's not what that person needs. So, at least 15 times we had such a man. They were all men. I'm not saying that a woman couldn't do it, but it just didn't happen in our study. So they're standing in the living room, and since it was okay to verbally do that, one, they could be a display, okay? So you're out in the farm and working in the garden or something else, and then in the living room, fuck you is happening. And one of the things I love to do is I would grab 3 medical students or health students and 3 whining patients who always think they're suffering more than anybody else, and I'd say, look, I need your help. And so we go around saying, we surround this person and dance around them doing this. And I'm sure it will not surprise you, they laugh. And as soon as they laugh, it's gone. So that worked for 9, and what was, I thought, stimulating about our environment is, and I'd say, what else should we try? I like, if that didn't work, one of the things I'd like to say, okay, let's pretend this is a lecture. So I'd get a group of people to sit in front of them, and while this person is doing that, and you could raise your hand and go, excuse me, Bill, the inflection you put on you, can you describe that for me? So all you had to do was something that made them smile or laugh, and they lost all of their juice. They couldn't do it anymore. And so you got to have fun doing something. And what was interesting is that often people who were labeled mentally ill had some of the best offerings. That this loneliness thing, alone, alone, so all alone, alone on a wide, wide sea, where God himself scarce seemed there to be. Another one of your poets. That it is, you can imagine a tribal animal that's been doing it, what do they say, 8 million years we primates have been communal. And that's 8 million years long. So how many unknown habits that we call habits, there wasn't even language then. So we knew to stay with each other and move around. As for our safety, when did the word play come into being? Who knows? But long before that, they played. And they never were without. If you know group animals, and you can see it if you study Jane Goodall's work, or Jane and I are pals, that if you study group animals, they are together. Particularly if you study ants or termites, they're really together. Who's seen leaf-cutter ants do their thing and kind of follow them? Aren't they fun to follow? There's this tiny little thing carrying a size of leaves 4 times their size, and they're just going right along with their buds in front and back. Okay, fear. Fear is a gift. You are, why have I not skydived? I'm not jumping out of a plane where I feel really safe in the plane, but what if the chute doesn't open? So I feel that fear is your friend. I could say even that fear tells me to work for peace and justice, to eliminate weapons. The largest one is global warming. We're going to be extinct. My prediction is we'll find out within 20 years that we're no longer viable. I think it's that near. It's not too late. And fear then can be a strong motivation if you can't find another force to push you into working for something. I think fear is a really good thing. Since 20 to 50 million men a day are having sex with a child, my youngest gonorrhea is 3. I don't and can't presume to know what it's like to be a woman, but your first rule should be, am I safe? If you're safe in the company of the people you're with, that's a very different feeling than if you have to be on guard. And I hear stories that scare me. I've heard of a gonorrhea of a 6-month-old. The saddest child I ever dealt with in my clowning was in Ecuador, who had been raped 2 months before I saw her, and she had not opened her mouth. They were getting ready to open her belly because she was starving to death. And it was the saddest face I ever saw. it had a happy ending. So boredom, loneliness, and fear are consequences of a loss of tribe, and that they are so well handled in a collective of friends. We have, even as nuclear families or as solo livers, we still can have great circles of friends. Unfortunately, we aren't really trained in the ecstasy of group living. How many fewer times you wash the dishes or make a meal. I always like the fact I have no mechanical skills whatsoever. In fact, don't hand me a wrench. But I lived with 3 wrenchettes. And if something happened to a car, there they were, right there with the wrench. Or one of those other things that I don't even know the names of, so I'm sorry. And I grew up a nerd, a science nerd. So I did bad things in science fair projects that I'm not sure I would do now. So, when I made the decision to live happy, what happened? I like to say it poetically that I dove into the ocean of gratitude and never found the shore. Thank you. Thank you. I estimate I'm grateful for 10 billion things, and I think I could list them. That gratitude is such an important part of everyone's life. Thank you. At 73, I woke up. I can walk. Yeah. Susan loves me as I never dreamed I could be loved. Just this weekend, my younger son, have led about 170 clown trips around the world, and he started doing it at age 14, and he's been on 50 trips, and actually studied at the Jacques Lecoq Physical Theater. And this last weekend in New York City was the first time he performed on stage. He was really nervous. He wasn't funny. I mean, it was talking. He did a great job. So, who thinks they'd like to be happy all the time? If you want to be happy for the rest of your life, I didn't go there, but I understand the simplicity of that song. So gratitude is so important that one of the exercises that I do for this workshop is the last one where bodies entwine and kind of weave themselves together, and you yell out what you're grateful for. And I love hearing what people yell out. I don't stop until I've heard sex and chocolate. Because if you're not yelling those out, let's talk. So, gratitude. And another important gift is a set of 3 words: intention, performance, and consequences. I will love life is an intention. I will love life. It can be I will celebrate life. I will be grateful for my life. These are intentions. I will be kind. I will not be nasty. So having an intention, what is your job? In this moment, giving your intentions and the circumstances, what performance will put your intention forward? And of course, that beautiful cybernetic loop, how did you do? If you don't like how you did, you change instantly. You know, it's amazing to me, couples, if you study couples that aren't working well, how repetitive they are for the things that hurt the couple. Never think you're going to win with someone you love if they have to lose. It's not a direction that's useful. So those are two ways that really are useful. And I do like to mention, and you've heard me mention it, the importance of thinking. A lot of the, I'd say, New Age things that came out in the 70s and 80s were trying to denigrate thinking. I don't think it was thinking that they were talking about. I would suggest that everything I do first came through thinking, that it made sense, that there was a good argument for it. It wasn't simply something out there to try, that thinking wrapped everything in a package that really sounded good. The fact that I think of Susan as the smartest person I've ever met has helped that, and really helped push thinking forward for me with those other 5 things, because I did not have the romance with thinking before her that I do now. That if I find myself liking a poet, it's their thinking. Is Robert here? Robert, yes. I think you were saying that I introduced you to Mary Oliver, is that right? Or
We have a mutual love of Mary Oliver, that's for sure.
Yes, and an American poet. So the reason I memorized all those poems is because it's a whopper collection of ideas in a short statement. Even the longest poem, which is one of Walt Whitman's poems. His Song of the Open Road. Afoot and lighthearted, I take to the open road. Healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me leading wherever I choose. Henceforth I ask not good fortune, I myself am good fortune. Henceforth I quiver no more, postpone no more, need nothing. Done with indoor complaints, libraries, querulous criticisms, strong in content, I travel the open road. It's a 26-minute poem. I will not torture you. But it's worth it. And I give it to myself whenever I damn well please. In the same way you can... What's nice about the arts is that they've collected them in such ways so you can listen to a piece of music. iTunes. I mean, I don't know how to use them. I have LPs and CDs. Same thing, same music. There's all of the artists, almost all of the, certainly all of the great artists are in beautiful collections. You can see them in real life here in London, or you can get books of their complete works. Holy schmoly. And there are a lot of artists worth that. Dancing. Susan and I have taken up tango. And boy, I don't know why the U.S. tango wasn't taught in elementary school. Wow, who's tangoed before? Okay, you know what I'm talking about. And what's nice about tango, because if you're thinking, oh my God, is if you just do the basic, you feel like you're really good. And there are steps, if you see great tango dancers, there are steps where you go, no way. But on the first tango lesson, you can do the basic. Architecture, all of the arts are there, and you can have them in your home. But nature, yeah, there are great books of it, but nature's for 3D. You know, that 3D stuff, I mean, it's hard to do 3D with a one-cell animal, but if you've never seen an amoeba ooze itself and surround the food particle and engulf it. It's just another one of our friends, right here for us. Okay, so what I can do is I can offer you a few films, or we could have a few questions and then do the films. Why don't we do that? Okay? Could we just let out a big scream? 1, 2, 3. Ah! My question always is, how long would they go if I kept that? And I find they go a long time. So, any questions? And you don't have to like anything I said or agree with anything. Yes?
Last year when you were here, I asked you how accurate the film was to real life. And I watched it again the other day. And I was wondering...
Can you speak up? Oh, here's a microphone. Ding, ding, ding.
Hi. Last year you said, well, I asked you last year how accurate the film was to real life, and you said it was very accurate apart from the person who was your friend, not your girlfriend.
Right,
Yeah.
it
And I was
my closest friend in medical school.
Yeah, and I was watching it the other day with my wife, and I guess my question this time is, how close are you to all those original still? How close and connected still are you to all those original friends and doctors who started?
Well, interesting you should say that. In August, we had a party because 2 of them died in this last year, and one of them left $5,000 to have a big party. And at that party, at least 250 people from those 48 years ago were there. And people were going, and they say the name, and you go, yes! For some you recognize, some have stayed in touch, some will live there. I'm still trying to build it. I probably also said that Robin was a foot shorter for accuracy. And it's interesting, since the film, the most commonly asked question is, what did I think about his suicide? I actually think he did euthanasia, which I support and have done. And so I don't think he killed himself. I think he had some very difficult neurological diseases that would steal the Robin people loved, and he didn't want to experience that. I'm just curious, because I'm trying to speak up for euthanasia. How many people here feel you want a choice? Right. If I can't recognize Susan, everybody knows, give me the happy drink. Because I'm dead. And there are probably it was tame. You know, the thing is, it was really tame relative to what went on there. For example, everyone was clothed. We were not a promiscuous community, we were a permissive one. And so we wanted people to be free. And in the U.S., if you take off your clothes and go out in public, you're arrested and called crazy and given heavy medication rather than a nice compliment. Yes, another question? Please be daring. Imagine what I'm saying. There is no mental illness. There's loss of tribe, loss of nature, disconnection from the arts. Yes, ma'am.
How did you financially keep the commune going?
Well, I'm passing the hat later. You know, it's been so... I'm in the 48th year of a project I was sure would take 4. In the US, your medical bill is the #1 reason you lose your home and 70% of bankruptcy. So what the hell does the doctor think they did in their 7.8 minutes? And the movie made $500 million, promised to build us, didn't give me $1. So that's the most extravagant, but I could say 98% of the promises made me, Pat, I'm going to send you a check, didn't happen. So often, since I'm a 6 million miler, I'm sitting next to somebody to find out who I am. They say, I love that movie. How's the hospital going? I need help. I'll send you a check. They give me their card. I call them up to 200 times to let them know I'd love for them to do it. And so if we look at all the money donated to Gesundheit in 48 years, money I make personally has accounted for probably 90% of all the money donated. So it's like a hobby.
But in the start, how did you keep on going with the hospital?
What's that?
In the start, when you just wasn't as a doctor, how did you keep on
Oh,
going?
we were poor. I couldn't get my teeth fixed. I mean, we were, every month, what I'm starting to do now again, we were groveling, and I did most of the groveling, because a lot of people don't like to ask, and I know we were doing a great thing, and so I asked, and asked, and asked, and asked, and so each month we crawled through glass and groveled for it, because it was so much fun to do that it wasn't an, oh shit, I've got to raise money. It was, how can we, so it wasn't unlike us at a meal in the mid-afternoon to take up a collection. Then go to the grocery store, get the food for dinner. And, you know, Mom helped, of course. She was generous. And the truth is, in a way, it's like deciding to be happy. You're focused, you decide you're not going to close, and so you do what has to be done. Are you a mother? You know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're a mother. Yes.
I'm Ash.
Hi.
I found myself really stirred up and inspired by your story, and particularly the word revolution and the way you've chosen to live and be a revolution, and choosing to be happy. It sounds to me like our question, so I'm going to try and discover this question as it comes along. It has something to do with, on one hand, I hear a person who is saying, you know, show up with kindness and compassion. This world is hard. But there's this other tone that sometimes comes through of like, hey, I made a choice, you guys made a fucking choice to live your life and be brave and do the revolution. And I'm curious about when it comes to whatever it is that creates this resistance in us, or we call it our ego or fear or whatever, there seems to be one hand is looking at it as that we've had this wounding and healing is needed, compassion, and through that safety and love, people will be able to rise up. But there's this other part that just says, hey, toughen up, grow up, let's go kind of harder. And I'm curious about how you...
That was never my style.
Yeah.
You know Vygotsky? Who knows Vygotsky, Russian psychologist, who talk about zones of proximal development, okay, which you've all seen with children really easily. But picture, if you can, when the hospital was open, all of the staff were vibrant, playing, loving, engaging. We had 30 goats. We had extensive farms. We were always putting on theater and those sorts of things. We had lots of toys. Believe it or not, I have a patent on an invention that you get inside of that gives you maximum stimulation to all your senses at the same time. And so, in the context of the Zanies, it was hard to be miserable. And I'm going to use your question to say something I haven't said, is, how should I say it? I think of all of the emotions as wonderful. They're a gift. They are the sense organs of the mind. So I'm angry at capitalism. I think of it as the worst disease of history. I want people to hear that if they know and respect me, I want them to hear my anger. That, you know, I've held 2,000 children the week they died of starvation in my arms. I weep. It's the right emotion. So I think it's not the good emotions are good and the bad emotions are bad. All of the emotions go to the mind and they say, what are you going to do about it? So I go to protests and I speak up. I get about 10 death threats a year. In the U.S., I feel obligated in every talk to say that we are the #1 mass murdering terrorist nation. And so I get men at a book signing who will bend over and say, you're dead, motherfucker. And I say, is that what you want me to put in your book? and so I think all of the emotions are great, but I haven't found intimidation or anger. What I would do, okay, if you're, I'm bad, I can't, I'm miserable all the time. I trick them, I put them in an environment, and I think, do they need to be surrounded by women? Have they shown any interest in any person? Is this a person that needs to milk goats? You know, who's milked an animal before? Wow. You're in London, you all aren't country. But I was shocked at how thrilled a person who never milked an animal was. You know, spurt. And so it was more of the Vygotsky kind of thought of you put people in. So we had all-night rock and roll parties 2 or 3 times a week. Because we didn't say you've got to do exercise. We were dancing. And how long you danced was something you loved the full dance floor. People love full dance floors. So by having an environment of love was there. We were the doctors for the country's largest motorcycle gang, the Pagans. And I loved getting pagans near gay men. And so I might take a flagrantly gay man, and this was back when it was a lot less cool than it is now, and ride up to a biker and go, okay, show me you're tough, hug this guy. And just play. It was humor is a trick to get love close. I say that about clowning. That as a clown, I've taken clowns into war 5 times. In Trinidad, I clowned for 5 men who were hung the next morning for capital crimes. 4 of them loved me. And so I am astounded at how bad you can be if you do it with fun. You can be really bad. Yes, ma'am. And if that didn't answer your question, we'll try again.
Quite similar. Nice to hear friends here. I'll really discover my question as I go along. Similar to you in a way, I was working as a nurse in the NHS here at St Thomas Hospital, and I struggled a lot. I wanted to be on the prevention rather than cure side of healthcare. And I was kind of walking contradictions. I was a nurse who was healing people as I was getting sicker with mental illness. I was a yoga teacher who was taking Prozac, and I was a life coach who was suicidal. And then that led me to start my podcast, which is the Prozac Yoga, and it talks all about the link between spirituality and mental health. And what I found really interesting when you talked, I was smiling inside as well as raging, if I'm honest. I had this similar half of what you were saying. I completely understood, and then half made my blood boil, but in a good way. But what I have to ask is, from my experience of depression, which I'm aware you might not necessarily be there to be something for me, I saw it, and the way you referred to Robin Williams' condition, that's kind of how I saw mine, is that I saw it as I learned and I read and I researched. I'm an academic, I do a PhD now in laughter yoga on mental health. And so I got my head in the books, I researched, I meditated, I sat in the trees to try and understand what my issue was. And I honestly, for me personally, I think it's different, 1 in 4 people are supposed to have depression, so I'm sure other people feel the same. For me, it was just clinical in the end. It felt like all that was wrong with me is my brain couldn't react to enough serotonin. I genuinely feel to this day that was it. I've had hard times, I'm sure people do, but none of that. I don't know, I felt like my connection to my spirituality was strong enough that that wasn't what was causing my depression. And then there's been years in my life where I've been on antidepressants, I haven't been, and I've been so fortunate I don't have any major side effects of being on antidepressants. And if anything, the most recent time I've come back on them after a suicidal episode not too long ago, within the last 12 months, I feel my connection to my spirituality has gotten even stronger. When Robert talks about being in the now, and when any of my favorite authors or teachers or mentors that I listen to talk about being in the now and the present, I feel I have such a strong connection to that now that I'm on a medical medication. So I was just wondering what your view on that. So I find it fascinating because I left working as a mental health nurse because I didn't want to be drugging people up because I essentially saw how bad it was. I was dishing out 5, 8, 10 pills 3 times a day, which was so usual as well. So it's just what your views, or if I were to approach you as a patient and say, I'm taking an antidepressant, what would you think to them? Sorry, I don't even know if there's a question there.
You know, imagine a 4-hour interview with you. How much of that would be about Prozac? But how much of that would be all those other things you mentioned that you love doing? And so, if you came as a patient not on anything, but you said you were depressed, suicidal, and that sort of thing, and we were living together, you would have been sucked into yoga in the living room.
But what I find so interesting is that my life circumstances...
Wait, they want a microphone.
What I found so interesting about my experience of depression most recently, when I was younger, it was circumstantial. So I would call that depression, I would say, as a situational sadness, as it were. But most recently, my life had changed. I love what I do. I love my job. I love my research. I practice yoga every day. I have friends, I have family, and I was one of those stereotypical people. But I was asking myself, what do you have to be depressed about? My life is so rich and I love it, and yet I still wanted to end it. And I couldn't I always wanted to understand everything. I couldn't understand why life was good and why was I not getting fulfillment from these things. And now I don't do take antidepressant. My life is the same, and I love it just as much as I did before. So I'm just fascinated by it.
Well, I'm obviously not going to tell you to go off.
Well, I probably will do again in the future at some
And
point.
I will hope our hospital is open. Let me tell you a situation that we've done. 6,000 military vets kill themselves a year. More than die in wars in the U.S. 6,000, and it's been going on a long time, and the U.S. psychiatrists, medicine, the government, they have no idea what to do. That's why there are t-shirts with 22. That's how many kill themselves every day. And so I contacted vet organizations. For years I wanted to take them on clown trips. And I didn't want them to pay, so I had to collect $35,000 from somewhere. And so 3 years ago, I called up vet organizations. I said, give me your most suicidal. And we took 10 of them for 1 week in Guatemala. It stopped all of their suffering, and they've had no suffering since. And then we did it 2 years ago with the same results. Not the same vets, different vets. And so what is that? How can one look at that? And so I think in a simple statement, I could say they reconnect with their loving. I think
were we open and you said, if you ever said, I'd like to go off the medicine, I mean, first, you should never go off quickly. The medicine is really strong and it owns you. And so you have to go off very slowly. And that if you went off, I would say, why don't you come and stay with us for a couple of weeks? And what I try to do with somebody who is depressed is to find the things in their stay there that charge them and help them see how they can turn them on whenever they want them. And that some of them might want to stay turned on. I never thought about God in my life, but for people for whom God is valuable, why would you ever not think about God? In the same way that if you like thinking of a friend, and it always makes you feel good, why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you having them dance in your head all the time? And to feel grateful. I don't know you, so I don't know what you're grateful for, but I can tell by the twinkle in your eye and the smile on your face that that's not the Prozac giving you that. That's you. And so I would say, wow, she'll be easy. Because the person goes, oh, God, you don't understand. I do understand, and I have the faith that you can find that place for yourself.
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
And that, come on a clown trip. Those are true stories. We just made a film of it, and it's being submitted to film festivals. We showed it for the first time last weekend in New York City at a conference, and it was a very powerful film. Yes, sir.
I just want to reinforce what this young lady said. I suspect you're right about at least 75% of the use of antidepressants, but I suspect there are physical conditions that they actually help with, like some other drugs. I was growing steadily more depressed for 10 years. I was on the verge of leaving the most wonderful woman I've ever known, and the doctor gave me Prozac. And by the next day, I was happier than I've been since I was a kid. My wife and I spent the entire day making love, and it did not dull me. In fact, within a week, I had founded a company that became a bit of an internet sensation and went public and all that, and I felt rejuvenated by it. So I suspect you're right most of the time, but I also suspect it's a physical condition that can really be helped.
So a question I have is, did you try making love to her all day long before the Prozac? Because that would have been one of my medical recommendations.
Like a lot of things in relationships, I was slowly taking out. We hadn't stopped. We were just taking all my teenagers again, that's all. Except before I acknowledged.
So I acknowledge that there are a huge number of people who feel their medication has been that for them. I don't like what chronic use of the medication does to people's brains. And I think you can find those things without the medication. And I'm willing to make an environment where a person can discover those things. And they can come in depressed, and I can show them 20 times that day they had no depression. And would ask myself, how can we sustain that? How can we make it longer? And so if a person is happy and fine with their medication, I don't say you're wrong, you got to get off of it. I will ask, do you want to get off of it? And are you willing to experiment? And because I think most people are unfamiliar with their brain. I think most people are completely unfamiliar with their brain. And that, I'm telling audiences in the U.S., I think no more than 10% of the citizens, adults in the U.S. ever think. That what I mean by thinking, they literally never do it. And that's exactly what the capitalist system wants. They want you to buy something. I mean, how is it that Trump isn't in prison? Now, how is it? And the only way he could not be in prison is if people aren't thinking. I'm sorry. And so I would, in those 4 hours, try to find out what things do you love? And then imagine ways of using those things to show you how powerful they might be. Like your wife making love all day long. Dude. Yes.
Just picking up on the other two comments before, I really hear what you're saying. But a lot of teenagers that I know are going through a lot of depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. And there seems to be quite an increasing trend, particularly in the UK. I'm assuming it might be wider than that in other countries. When you go to the doctors, typically the response is the synapses are not relaying chemicals properly, and therefore they need these drugs. And I'd just love to I know you've really kind of expanded on this now, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about the younger generation, and are they predisposed to this? Is it actually a chemical issue in addition to all these other kind of human factors?
I think most teenagers have no idea how to use their brain. The schools are horrible. To be graded is criminal. Education isn't about your standing, it's about your ecstasy over Shakespeare. Let me not for the marriage of true minds admit impediment. Love is not love which alters when at alteration finds, nor bends with the remover to remove. No, it isn't everything, etc. So, it's one reason I'm really concerned with the smartphone. It's made young people stupid beyond belief. I mean, I'm astounded at how little they know and how little they're interested in something. So one of my first questions with teens is, what are you interested in? And the traditional answer is, what do you mean? And wow. If you ask me what I'm interested in, I'd say, do you have a month? and yes, I think our teenagers are our barometer for how bad things are, how dangerous things are, and pills are not the answer. They may help, they may save a life in a moment, but it doesn't save teenagers. And I'm glad my children are out of the teenage years. I am concerned. They're 42 and 31. I see a vast difference. And it's so easy to give a pill. All the pills have side effects. Huge numbers of people who are on the medicine think it's why they are good, where at best the pill is a help. Here's another thing I haven't said today. My 4-hour interviews, in my 51 years of interviewing huge numbers of people, 3% had self-esteem. Here's the figure. 3% love themselves. So I would have people chant, I love me! And those do it lousy the first time. So just loving oneself. So we'll sit down in front of a mirror and say, I love me, I love me, I love me. In the care workshop, that's one of the exercises in it. And you can see the difficulty. I teach at a children's circus with Lady Grady, who was the MC at Woodstock. and it's 7 to 14-year-olds, and I went there to teach slack rope walking, but I found that kids wanted to talk with somebody who would talk with them, so I stopped teaching the rope, and we sit around and have subjects. Like today it's bullying, today it's self-esteem, those kinds of things. And maybe I would like to be thankful that there are pills until we actually do something good for ourselves. If love were taught as an intelligence in school, K through 12, 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, we would not have teenagers have that. And if teenagers are volunteering, I often take those kinds of teenagers on clown trips. What happened to the vets is they found that they were a really loving person. And there are few things that make you feel young, like you relieving someone else's suffering. And that's what happened to the vets. It's like, well, we can't really tackle it, so I'll give you a pill. And huge numbers of doctors don't love themselves, and huge numbers of doctors only have 5 minutes with you anyway. And so it's a really easy way to something that life can do for you without them. I will always believe that. And I would never take pills from somebody. I can certainly show them the huge volume of literature now condemning them. There are huge numbers of books now condemning psychotropic medication. And this one has this areas of argument, this one has this areas of argument. And we have no education in loving life. Life is hard. No hard are you burying your children from starvation. No hard is being in a war zone. Hard is being in this planet now. It's hard for me to think of a government on the planet I respect. Can you? Notice how no one raised their hand. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. First of all, Pat, I'd like to ask how you can stay some time.
Well, when our hospital is built, we're going to have 40 beds for guests, for people who come and volunteer. So where I haven't been a great fundraiser, I've collected string quartets and huge numbers of people who I know when we're open will come there. And a clown trip, of course, is coming there somewhere else.
Yes, definitely on that one. I wanted to ask a little bit about your thoughts around domestic violence. Unfortunately, recently, I know of an amazing lady, a doctor of psychology, who has ended her life after years of experiencing domestic violence. I want to know what your thoughts are on how we can tackle this as an issue, particularly violence against women.
I'm curious if you heard when I was saying the teaching of the intelligence of loving 1 hour a day, 5 days a week for 13 years. That's the most intelligent answer to your question I can give. I always tell women, if he hits you, leave him. I always say it absolutely. And I don't think I'll change on that. The amount of domestic violence I've seen is gigantic. You know, in a way, in my parents' generation, it couldn't have been more normal. If you didn't act right, I cannot imagine. I'd rather somebody shoot me than hit Susan. And so we need to make a world where violence is not an option.
I think what's difficult as well, though, is from the lady I was talking about.
Uh-oh, they're going to get the microphone for you because most people haven't learned to project their voice.
It wasn't sort of physical violence that she experienced, but actually psychological, emotional abuse I think what's difficult about it is, first of all, it's not recognised as much and not as well understood in a way, and it can be so very, very subtle that even very, very bright women who know that, you know, it is wrong, it affects you so badly in terms of your ability to kind of function and to articulate what's happening to you. And it's quite serious. And I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of teaching the love and, you know, at schools and things. I think a lot of these issues would be sorted out better through education initially as well.
I think that's why Edward Albee wrote Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? You know, they spend 3.5 hours screaming at each other. And then at the very end say, I love you. What a bunch of crap. I mean, there are huge numbers of men that mentally think, I'm the man of the house. I am the boss. I am the breadwinner. That was my parents' generation. The mother was actually home with the children. It's not the case now. And still a lot of men imagine that their role is to be the head of the household. What part of the body is the woman? And so, you know, it's one of those many things we need to change. We need to change. I've sometimes told audiences I think every problem in history was caused by men. And almost no one ever tries to think up the time when that wasn't. But yeah, there are a few women. Almost no one can name 10 nasty women of their lifetime. But anyone can name 10 nasty men that they've met the last week. And so the image of how to be a man and what that means to be. I was a sissy boy. I was beaten up as a fruitcake by men. Yeah. And so I know those kinds of men, and there are a lot of them, and they look like they're in charge of everything in the U.S. Well, why don't billionaires give away all their money?
They're scared.
You know, what is it that
Makes, you know, capitalism stole the word rich to mean money. When rich are your friends, the service you do in the world, that's rich. I'm rich. And yet, you know, capitalism is the perfect male thing. It's the male invention that will make us extinct unless we feminize the world. That is, you know, if I had a magic wand, women would be in charge of everything for the next 1,000 years. And I don't care what anyone says. Yeah.
Okay, so first I have a couple comments and then I have a question, if that's okay.
It's all okay.
Okay, so as a teenager, I see what you're talking about with phones quite a lot. And I also know that teenagers hate their phone. They love it, and they have this love-hate relationship with the phone, they just hate it. It's totally addictive, but you don't want more than anything just to throw it out the window. And I don't know, it's like, it kind of proves to me that it definitely doesn't bring happiness. I don't know, but
I'm agreeing with you.
And I also want to say, a lot of the things that you've been talking about, I see they're reflected in, have you ever read Fahrenheit 51, 451?
Borges?
Oh, Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I don't know,
Sure.
that's another comment.
Don't set any of my books on fire.
Exactly. And then one of the things you're saying about capitalism, I think I agree with you completely. And I also think that the similar pattern, you can see it throughout history, like, with religions in the past that have taken power and used it basically as, it's sort of a collective belief can be such a good thing, but it can also be a way of controlling everybody.
on my schedule it said I was going to be clowning here, and I went, I'm wearing a nose. I'm going to be bad. Stephen King writes a thick book called It with Clown from Hell. And if stuff that was done in religions would make people outlaw religions, then we'd have no religions. And my clown character is a Down syndrome adult. Why? It's interesting, they're called retarded, but they're the most unconditionally loving people I've ever met. So if you're really loving, you're retarded. And they're funny. And so I invade people, and I'll show you an example. 35 years ago, I said, how can I stop public violence? It's everywhere in the U.S. You're in a grocery store, you're pushing along, and there's a parent and child beating each other. Okay? Or you're in the parking lot after a movie, a man throws his head against the car, yeah, and people walk by. And so that's when I started to only wear clown clothes. So this is my conservative look. And if I'm in the grocery store and I turn the corner and I see them fighting, I'm going to invade. So I pull up my pants like this, kind of a superhero thing. Or I pull up my pants like this. And I use what I call the triple threat. Notice the convenience. Triple threat object number 1. It's a piece of dental equipment. Triple threat number 2. Notice the convenience. Really God teeth. And the key to draw, triple threat number 3. Excuse me, I have to work it out here. It's a daughter. So, you can imagine if I'm in a grocery store, they stop fighting. And in 35 years, it's been 100% effective all over the world. And so, actually, to answer your question, I know I'm warning. And so, remember the elevator experience I did at the beginning? In those days, this was before I was wearing clowns, or necessarily even thinking I was clowning. I was looking and using those 6 qualities as a way of invading people's spaces. How do I take a 6'4", possibly imposing man and make him harmless? Which is why I chose a Down syndrome adult for my clown character. So 5 times we've gone into war. Exploding bodies. I have seen horrible things you never want to see. And so far, yeah, some people say I don't like clowns, and I sometimes fall on the ground dead. Because they can have their fear and I'll play with them. I don't force it on them. Get away from me! Get away from me! I don't do that. And the thing is, I think, especially if you're an extreme extrovert like me, you can tell in people's eyes what the decision should be. And usually I look so much like a fruitcake. I've got a chicken on my head, a fish in my hand, and my pants are pulled up. How can this guy hurt anybody? so I'm almost never told to stop. But if they, what's interesting, children sometimes, if you're in a hospital and walk into a room and the child screams, and I sometimes, as I said, fall over dead, and then they're curious. Sometimes I go in there and pretend like I'm clowning with the mother. Or since I'm in a clown group, I may ask one of the women of the group to go in that room. Because I'm not interested in frightening anybody. And if you went on a clown trip, you know, here are these suicidal vets in 1 week changed their life forever. And we take them to situations of children that are so sad, and they see that they lift their spirits, and look out, those vets don't have a chance. We're bad. Should we take one little break and let me show you 2 film segments? Okay? I'd like to show you, and then we'll get back. I love that you're asking questions, because I think they were worried that there might not be questions. But I'm trying to say things to either irritate or stimulate. So, this first scene is a clown trip to Cuba. Many times we went to Cuba, especially when it was against the law for U.S. citizens to go to Cuba. We break the law. And so we were always under the wing of the Children's National Theater. And it was led by a man who's a wonderful man. And 2 trips ago he said, "Pat, I need your help." My grandmother, who made me everything that I am, is dying. She has metastatic cancer. It's all over her. Morphine, none of the painkillers stop her pain. Would you please visit her? I, of course, was so honored, I instantly said yes. And what was a giggle is that on this trip was my brother, the doctor that's been with me 43 years, and I'd say my closest friend, and my oldest son. So the 4 of us actually went to visit her. I'm just going to show you the first few minutes. Was there an hour and a half, and he only knew her screaming in pain. She had no pain in that hour and a half. So we have to go through just a few scenes here. Is there a way to quickly turn off the lights? This is the necking portion. This is an example of, I see this man working. You can always invade anybody. One of my props is the world's largest underpants. I've had 2 presidents of countries in my underpants. I've got pictures to prove it. By the way, this is my brother, duh. Now you ask yourself, how do you get a pacifier in an old lady's mouth? She never had any pain in the visit. She died 2 months later. Four generations lived in 2 rooms. this deadly pocket for you know what. In Spanish, snot is moco. That's probably enough. If you watched the whole hour and a half, you would see her bliss the whole time. And I don't know what I'm going to do, getting back to your question. I know I have 30 toys in my pockets, and I know this was the first minute or two of the vision, and after that I knew I could do anything I damn well pleased. And did. Okay, we turned off the sound, so let's try another. Okay, this will be. These are films I took when our hospital was open, and I want to show you what probably will feel radical with you. At the time, women throwing up and dying of starvation was called anorexia nervosa. The word bulimia was not yet in use. And a sister of one of our members, in those days, psychiatrists called it the most difficult patients they had. And traditionally, they were sent to a chronic mental hospital for 3 to 6 months. And this woman had been in those places, but then and it took me 1.5 years to talk her into us throwing up together. And if you can't beat them, join them. And I want to describe the event because it's so interesting. This was our life. And whoever was there saw whatever we did in addition to whatever we were doing for them. So I spent 1.5 years and said, let's make a movie, we'll all throw up together, oh boy. And finally she said yes in the morning, and so I worked all day to get the thing set up, and then, okay, right before the first shooting, a small biker gang comes into the house. And you know, bikers like to think they're the weirdest and the toughest and all of that. And I thought, oh shit, there goes my movie. And I said, wait, there'll be the cartoon. Okay, so a biker cartoon would be them arm wrestling. And what's very interesting, if you know manly men, as soon as the guy wins it and lets up his strength, the other guy pins him. And you get this, that's why I call it a cartoon. And then I go, okay, let's get ready. Damn! One of the women who had recently moved in had broken up with her gay lover and had moved in with a man that lived at our community, and they're still there. And so the woman who moved in left her dog with her former lover, and in walks the former lover with the dog dead. And then I go, oh boy, the movie's gone. And I said, wait, we'll put the dog in the movie. So I get a lab coat, put it on the dog, and say his name was Joseph. I said Joseph in his last starring role. And then one of our nurses said, I'm not going to be in a movie with a dead dog. So we had to talk about death and its relationship and all of these things, which was really important conversation. You know, death is such a interesting conversation with almost everybody. And so finally, everything was said, and let's see the film. Oh, you know the one, it would be anorexia nervosa.
Yes.
You're probably wondering, what don't beat a dead horse? This is Super 8, back in those days.
1970s?
Here are the two bikers. Look how much they want to win and where they're betting. So this guy gets him, he lets it up, and then the other guy gets him. Yeah.
If you're sensitive to throwing up, you may want to shut your eyes, because you'll see that it triggers everybody to throw up. This was the psychiatrist. We had a psychiatrist and two family doctors. He was from Brooklyn and a very Woody Allen-like person. Elliot Acufort, JJ's family doctor, who became an acupuncturist when it was illegal to practice acupuncture. And here's the dog in his last starring role. And my stage name was Dr. Niedernaam, or Niedernaam. That was pre-gray hair days. This is 1974.
That was our nurse that had trouble.
I had it all set up to get all these fancy shots, but as soon as she barfed, everybody started barfing.
Joseph, talk to him. And I'm going, stop, I gotta get the camera.
Boy, was I happy. None of the doctors could throw up. We even tried shotgunning a beer.
At best, we had dribble.
about coming to the hospital, right?
So what was the reaction to the patient?
By the way, she never needed hospitalization again. It doesn't mean she stopped being weird, but has a couple of normal children and no labels.
Wow.
Okay, now we may have some more questions. Did anyone come close to throwing up? Who? You did. I'm so glad. Okay. Let's see, I think you had a question, right? Did you stop having the question?
I can speak very well English.
Oui, je t'aime.
Votre projet d'école en France, ça serait possible de secret?
Le projet d'école en France, ça serait quoi? L'école possible in France.
L'école passion.
Is your project of school will be possible in France? Thank you. Is your project of school will be possible in France? C'est ça la question.
Et l'école passion.
Articule ma valise, ça je comprends rien.
L'école passion. Élève passion. Il a créé en 91.
The school that was created in 1991. I don't understand in French, so it's...
What if I say oui, oui? And I don't mean urination.
It seems that you created a school in 1991, so he would like to know if it would be possible to install it in France or to settle it in France now. But I
No, we
know
don't have a hospital now.
No.
After 12 years, he closed our doors and said we have to go public. We refused publicity because we have no respect for the media. But that's what we thought would make... Our first donation came 2 years after we closed. That's how bad a fundraiser. I'm owed for $1,800 in foundation grants. So we are still... The movie was a nightmare, and we didn't raise the money, so we had a movie made because Universal promised to build it and didn't give us a penny. What?
Who at Universal do we need to harass?
You know, feel free to contact them. Yes.
This is going back to where there's some people sharing about this confrontation. And you said, why wouldn't you want to switch on, your thought of the person that dances in your head? So that's actually my question. All of your work, so why is it that people don't want to switch that on?
Well, I think self-esteem is a really... If you don't love yourself, I think that kind of person has trouble thinking they can do something. Other people can who do love themselves, but if they're thinking, and they tell me, Frank, I can't, I tried.
So when you, for example, took these soldiers who've got PTSD down to, was it Guatemala, you reconnect them with their self-love, so they remember again. I'm just trying to think, what is it then that then makes them not needing medication anymore?
I refused the Vietnam War because I knew war would destroy me. I said, shoot me, put me in prison. I'm not going to your war. And so when I went before the board, they gave me a conscientious objector, which is a legal category to not have to go in the military. I am sorry I don't have the that film here. It's just brand newly done. But they're in a climate of love. It's really hard to survive a climate of love without being loving. That's what we found when our hospital was open. That the nastiest of people, everything was free. They saw us cooking for them, cleaning up. They saw it wasn't long before they were cooking and cleaning up, and it's that what Vygotsky calls that zone of proximal development is so powerful. Uh-oh, she has a PS.
So when we talk about, we aren't being, our children aren't being taught in the education system about self-love and all the rest of it. So doesn't it also start at home that us as parents need to teach them that?
Right, but what percentage of male parents know anything about it? Not a very high percentage. And especially now in this work climate where the mother's working, the father's working, their marriage isn't very happy, they're arguing at home. That's the climate the kids are growing up in. I talk to a lot of children of separated parents, and their home life was hell. Ouch. Yes.
Hi, Patch. I just wanted to reflect on some of the speakers before the break when we were talking about different health conditions or scenarios and whatever they're doing for it. And the first time I met you was when we came into the UK last year to London. But previous to that, my mum had got uterus cancer. And it was around about January 2017. So, I've done the laughter yoga, but, with the cancer, it's something that needs not just one thing, it needs a mix, or a holistic mixture of everything, like you said. And, the only thing that I've resorted to, because in my culture, there is this one side where people have become fixated to pharmaceutical medicine, and then there's the other side, which is sort of studying back to my grandma, which is like natural herbal medicine. And the one thing that cured her, the one thing that got rid of the cancer, was my research into medicinal cannabis. And for the last few years, I've been following what's going on in the US with army vets with PTSD and other people being given permission to and everything. And I've given that I then came to the laughter yoga thing you come to London last year. And then a few months later, she got me all clear. So she, got down to zero and all came up. But when you come last year, it was, even though I just thought I was coming to the laughter yoga thing, I didn't realise until recently that me and you was sort of like a good, it was a good interval to what was happening for me and my mum. And so we did the, a few days after, it was great and everything. But then the crux for me of the whole 2 days was right towards the end, where we learned, you showed us games, we were all having a laugh, playing everything. And then right towards the last hour, which was a surprise, but actually it was interesting that we could actually even have this discussion, was with regards to, when you spoke earlier about, with regards to the child abuse, child sexual abuse, And for me, that showed me like, okay, you're here to have a laugh and everything, but then there's this other side, which is like, we have to really take it serious. And then you brought it up again today. I just wanted to say, when you said, what is it you love? For me, it's there's a lot of things I love. I love this, because it's the same one. But then on the other side, when you came last last year, I'd have to say that, just reflecting the last few hours, I'd have to say that, yeah, everyone in the room I love, but because of your presence, I love you even more. Because what you gave me. Now, what I want to ask is that, let me just rush down before I sort of flood the whole room, is whether it's been about the Prozac thing, or the drugs thing, or the PTSD, or the cancer, or whatever condition people are afflicted with, what I've experienced is that when I'm saying certain things which is on the fringe, which is not in the mainstream, or whether you post on Facebook or online or wherever, most people be like, having a normal conversation, oh crap, don't tell me that. No, look, my cognitive dissonance is only about a centimetre wide. I don't want to look outside of that. You brought it home and spoke about the child abuse, and actually said, yes, we're let's have a laugh. At the same time, how can we be talking about climate change? How can we be talking about the future for the children, or the next generation, when we're seeing the children right now getting completely messed up? And that's nothing to do with climate change, that's just a psychology for people in society. So my question is, how do you deal with that situation where 99% of people in society just want to stay with their version of reality, which is not reality TV? And anything else which is actually the real issues we need to look at and solve, it's like it's some other overventure. It's like, don't tell me. Even if it's my children, maybe I want to know, but I don't really want to know. But how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that sort of, that scope which is only a centimetre wide? But thanks if you could answer that, and as I said, I love you too.
I would imagine it's a mile wide. You know, I don't keep my mouth shut, so sometimes I'm at a shopping mall and just yell out, what about global warming? Talk to me. So, I mean, Thomas Jefferson said, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary to rise up against the tyranny, how does one stay silent? I don't stay silent if I see fighting in public, you saw what I do, and that you think up things to do. And you get rid of fear and try something. Do you have children? You have to do that every day, all day long, especially when they're really young. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And that's why women do it better. Not do as I say, but what can I do?
I would say that when my mom was in bed last year, because you said you have children, I don't know. When my mom was looking at me from bed, and I was like, you know, just get the food, get the medicine, all that stuff. For the first time in my life, because you know, she gave birth to me, obviously, when I was a baby. So she'd always see that look on my face, probably, which is like, I'm just born, where the hell are you going to get me this and that? Well, the first time in my life, I saw it in her face. I was looking, I was like,
I'm sorry, I need the microphone.
Yeah.
Who is actually anyone this far away that's hearing you clearly? You're hearing you clearly?
sorry, I just...
He must be 73.
I was just conscious of her. This lady's doing a marathon every 5 minutes, right? So, yeah, I just wanted to say when you said that, yeah, children are learned, but when I see my mum in bed every day last year, I realised on just that one moment, she was looking at me just probably the same way, probably more than I was looking every day when I was born, which is like, where the fuck have I ended up, and what are you going to do? And that was not an experience, and that just sort of like, oh, okay, I'm going to look after my mum who's 73 years old, but she's looking at me like she's a helpless baby who's just like relying on me. So that's my only experience with regards to that. But the other thing I wanted to say is our inability to actually open up conversations and listen to what's really going on. I think it's as bad as actually being stuck on the mobile phone. Because it's an ability to just escape out of that usual conversation and actually say, what the hell is really going on? I think that is as bad as the devices. And having the image of this device, yeah.
If I hear you right, I mean, okay, so I've done 45 years of yoga, weightlifting, and aerobics. That's why I feel 35. And speaking and thinking are the same. You practice. So now, since I've climbed at 10,000 deathbeds, I'm ready to be at another deathbed. What's interesting is if you're with a clown group, you're ready the first time. And it's still thrilling the 10,000th time. And that we don't have practice time. Say, you know what fascinates me? I was just in New York City, but any big city is this way. You walk down the street and you look at people's faces, and it looks like they're either going to the psychiatrist or coming from it. You know, very few people are walking down the street going, zippity-dee-da, zippity-yay, my, oh my, what a wonderful day. Try it. You will be surprised how much fun you have singing that song loud anywhere you go. And you can say, yeah, I used to be on 6 medications. Now I'm just singing loud. It really is fun. And if you know, if you have that sparkly eyes and smile that you have right now, you can get away with them a lot. A lot.
I was just curious about the idea of learning to love life. And if you had, I don't know if you have, or you have, I've tried to follow the story, but I did think you had a hospital. Thank you for clearing that up. And I hope one day you do have that hospital again. But maybe you've been in front, I think you said you've worked with teenagers. So let's say a 15-year-old boy, earlier on we heard about someone's story about what happened to them when they were 15. What's your lesson plan? What are you doing in that?
Well, I like to think that I bring myself to each thing. I don't have any kind of set plan. It's improvisation.
But it's...
See where it goes.
About the idea of learning to love life? If you want to, you know.
Well, it has to, in my mind, learning to love life is you say, I will love life. So if you're in a moment where you're not loving life, figure out 10 things where if you think of them, you instantly slip into loving life. Do you love anything to where just acknowledging it brings you back there?
Yeah.
Okay, like name 3. Name 3.
Me? Well, any dancing anywhere. Chocolate.
So you can...
Chocolate, dancing anywhere.
Dancing anywhere. I did say sex anywhere.
I heard dancing and chocolate.
Yes.
Third one.
I said sex sometimes, but that was just me.
Well, no matter who you are, you can't do sex all the time. So sex is a sometime thing.
But enjoy it.
But if you're awake, you can pretend like you're dancing just about all the time. And
but what I said after that was I work with this idea of I'm deciding I will. I'm just curious about that because in my experience, I've lived in community, I've worked with lots of different people groups. We run a not-for-profit working with young people whose lives are hell. You might not think that they're hell, I would say they're hell. I'm currently off of work. You know, I haven't seen that it's that simple. I wish and I long for it to be.
so your work is to help people and you don't get high from that?
I don't get high from that.
Holy smoly, boy, you're wasting your time, girl. When you're helping, that's what a mother does.
Yeah, no, I do that a lot. Sometimes I do, and sometimes
I don't.
I would say during those times, do something you do.
That's what I'm doing, not working. I'm here.
But it's amazing how few men actually know that helping another helps himself. Most women at least know it if they've been parents, then they love their children. And most people have to train themselves to think about themselves. If you don't love yourself, the last thing you want to think about is yourself. You don't love yourself. So, if you want to love life in every moment, be in a moment, and think about something you know you love. Be thankful for it. And I mean, you can always have chocolate, right? Well, and so the nice thing about eating a lot of chocolate and then noticing you're gaining weight is what's chocolate replacement? I can make a recommendation. The number one funny thing in the world is partying, okay? Partying. Everywhere people love partying, so I always have 3 sizes of whoopee cushions. Okay? I have the traditional size whoopee cushion. Where is this thing here? Maybe it's in the other pocket. Wow. Yeah.
We're the smallest country. Living senior buckets. Somewhere in my travels.
So let me go back here to my bag.
Operating whoopee cushion.
So I have small, medium, and large. In this pocket, I have what I call the grandmother tooth. Look at this tooth all in here. Okay, if we're really quiet, you'll understand why I call it the grandmother tooth. Sometimes it makes a little poof. You heard it. But this one, oh my God. Who would like to fart on me? Okay, you're very near, so you may want to stand up. There's a good reason not to smoke. Now, if you don't know about whoopee cushions, you don't pound on it, you lower yourself on it. So stand in front of the chair, I'll kneel down here, and say, please, fart on me. Beautiful. So I am surprised, and I don't know what happened. You know, I've gone through several security things. Maybe I lost it in the security thing. But the normal size whoopee cushion, you can fart anywhere you go. Okay? And it doesn't make you gain weight. You already say you love farting. So just, you know, wherever you are, you go, yeah, I used to eat a lot of chocolate, you think I'll be it. But now, the doctor said, if I just fart, I'll feel good. Well, you saw I had her fart on me, I didn't have to fart on her.
So when I talk about making myself, I want something from myself. I want to be an instrument for peace and justice and care. So everything that I see that I do that influences that, I'm going to do. I'm not going to have time when I don't do those things. I'm going to have a large number of them. So I probably know 1,500 songs. I know hardcore gospel music and raunchy bad songs. And lots of poems. Huge numbers of poems. But just saying them is chocolate. And that way you can have an occasional chocolate. And the other things you just call chocolate. I understand what I'm saying, yes?
Sorry, I forgot where I was.
Going back to the idea of peace, what would you do or have you done if someone actually physically attacked you, or you have been unable to stop someone fighting through your beautiful outfit?
Well, a thing I do most often is fall to the ground and beg for mercy. You big brute, please don't hurt me, please. You know, I confess to being a yellow-bellied coward, and
you're a big man.
You know, you'd be surprised, because if you're in a bar, short people a lot of times like to pick a fight if they're a little drunk with a large person. And if something like that happens to me, I instantly fall to the ground and show that they already won. And there's no points. You know, if I go, okay, yeah, come at me, then maybe hitting me and making me bend over going, that would be points. But what kind of points do they get if I'm already on the floor begging for mercy? Please don't hit me. I'm the Seventh-day Adventist. Jehovah's Witness. You know, so I play with it. You know, it's like that guy who bent over me wanting me to, when I was at a book signing. And I'm not going to be silent, okay? I'm going to be, I think of the U.S. as the most dangerous country on the planet. I have nothing good to say about nationalism ever. Ever. I'm like John Lennon, thank you, John. No country, no religion. That's me. Imagine all the people living in life in days. You can do that anytime you want to.
I'm being whispered to that people are asking her for me to do exercises.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Let's get them moving.
You understand, for a thinker, talking is an exercise, just to let you know what I mean. And notice no one asked for a poem. And God forbid, I'll give you a short one. And then I'll ask you, somebody describe, why don't you say the exercise you want, or I can do one of the exercises I do. Okay. Emily Dickinson, probably the most wonderful American poetess, if we have to judge them. 19th century, very strange woman who, when people came to visit her, They sat downstairs and talked up to the stairwell to her who was up there. This is her poem. She didn't title them.
Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul, that sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash that little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it on the chillest land and on the strangest sea, but never in extremity it asked a thing of me.
Okay, so what I'd like you to do is pair off in here with somebody you don't know and either find 2 chairs to sit in or sit on the floor, and the quicker you do it, the better. In the chairs or on the floor. Thinking is play. Most people don't know that. You can do it standing. It's probably easier if you're sitting facing each other. And decide who will go first. Exercise. Everybody has a partner. The person going first will look the other person in the eye uninterruptedly and say, "I love you." Ready? Begin. I love me. With your deepest sincerity. You're repeating that beautiful phrase,
I love me. I love me. Over and over until I say stop. Ready, begin.
And now I'm asking the other person to do it. As close as your physical boundaries allow. Not looking away. And what you want to do is find the delight in its truth. You want to, can't wait to say it again. 1, 2, 3, go. The new partner says. really look another soul in the face and with your best sincerity to say, I love me. I love me. I love me is really hard. Often in high schools, not a single couple can actually do it. So play with it. I'm interested, what kind of feedback? Anyone want to say something about what the experience was for them? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, could we microphone this down?
Uncomfortable after a few minutes.
Uncomfortable, yes. Who would admit to some discomfort? Raise your hand and be honest. Uncomfortable. Great. Thank you for being honest. Yes, sir.
I switched briefly to I love you, and with a total stranger, it was still easy to say I love me.
Wow. That's actually not my experience, but I love hearing that it's yours. Thank you. What if you were given the assignment that each day you will walk up to 100 people and say, I love me, and another 100 people and say, I love you, and it looks like there's tension, say, I've been assigned. Somebody else, yes ma'am. Okay.
I found it quite uncomfortable for myself, but I found it so pleasurable to hear it from somebody else. So pleasurable to read my face through. So that's interesting.
And that's who would have said that that was their experience? Hard to do it for yourself, a delight in the other person doing it. Great, yes. Here, who had their hand up? Okay.
I found that, well, it was a lovely thing, really, because it was like
a safe place to say that, and it was this kind of soul connection thing, really. It was as if you're kind of reflecting to the other person. That's how I felt doing that. It was just quite amazing.
In my care workshop, I have 9 or 12 different exercises that are I love me exercises. Yes. Somebody else? Yes, there's here, hands up. And while she's walking, I was thinking of closing with another strange film that's short. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. You're probably wondering about the Don't Beat a Dead Horse.
What I found for me was it ranged from being a statement to a question. And I had things coming within me that was like, I love me, do I? To I love me, and I'm thinking of situations where I love me and how I love me. And also to what Robert talked about this morning, a couple of times came to me, I love me as I am now. And so it ranged, and I think we talked about at the end of it, that when I was being listened to, it was felt the waves of going through the exercise.
And this was your partner?
Yes, and just to add to that, I had to stop sort of halfway through when I was going first because I was so overwhelmed by the roller coaster I was going through. And then listening and observing that same roller coaster in the tone of voice and the body language, it was really an incredible experience.
So thank you for pushing me to have an exercise.
Thank you for doing it.
There are infinite numbers of them. Anybody else want to say something? Here's
one more.
Right here.
Little bit of that. A little bit of the moist eye syndrome came up during that.
You want to blow your nose on my shirt?
No, just my eye, darling.
Okay.
No, not my nose.
I love it when people blow their nose on my shirt.
Oh, okay. I'll see what I can do next time. That's it. Just halfway through, obviously there was something going there, and I've only just about managed to sort of just wipe, only very slight tear, but nevertheless it's there. So, interesting.
So, one last one. Who's really interested in...
One last burning question.
Well, not a question, something to share.
Share.
I would agree with the comments that it was more pleasurable hearing the other person say it. I actually felt my cheeks go into spasm. I was smiling that much. And I laugh every day and experience lots of people in laughter sessions saying, oh, my cheeks, but that was incredible. My cheeks were absolutely bursting. Thank you.
Bursting. Of course, Mooners know that these are also well, and that, okay, before we show the film, if we show the last set, you'll see it, Don't Beat a Dead Horse. And I wanted to show this one because at this time we lived on 82 acres on the Shenandoah River, and it was winter time, and I went for a walk up our mountain, and there was a dead horse. It wasn't our horse, even though it was on our land. It had gutted it, or other animals had gutted it. And I instantly thought of the phrase, do you say it in England? We definitely do in America, don't beat a dead horse. And I thought, wow, I'm never going to kill a horse and that sort of thing, but here is a dead horse, we've got to make a film. And it was the kind of thing we did. So we thought a little of Bergman, if you know Bergman's films. And so, again, anyone who was a patient could join us. It was just spur of the moment, this was our life. You think up something, who will do it with you? You will see the angel appear and say this.
Take two. So I don't know if I should show you another one or not. I do like to ruin my reputation. Should you see one more? Okay, you have the choice between irony, where something strange happens with flies on flypaper, or Eco-Man, when we found a man who ate cockroaches. We got a hissing cockroach from an insect zoo, and he had no trouble eating it. And of course, whenever we got a person do their strange thing, we did our strange thing too. So, what do you think? Flies on flypaper? Or so the hell with it? 2 minutes.
2 minutes, and we've got 2 minutes, everybody!
I'm sorry. Then it'll have to be irony.
Go for it.
Next to irony.
And I just want to give you a background. We had a lot of goats. We were a farm, and so in the summertime there were flies. You put up fly paper, and this is what happened. This would be 1977.
do is have people think up things. And then whoever wants to participate, participates. Whoever wants to watch, watches.
And who's ever horrified goes for a walk.
Thank you very much.